Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from all around the world. It's great to see so many people pouring through to be with us in January. Happy New Year. I hope you had a great Christmas and enjoyed some time off over the festive period. And thanks for being here today. It seems like a long time since we were all together in this forum. And last time it was myself under the spotlight with Paul, which was a great experience. And I hope that you were able to gain something from that. But today, I promise you, will be far more rewarded, because today, and there actually couldn't have been any better a time to position today's main theme, which is all around how do we begin? Where do we start from? Well, we start from the test. If you're not testing, you are guessing. So everything that we're about is about test-based nutrition. See what the problem is, see what the status is, and then you're empowered to make an informed choice. And we genuinely could have no better person than our very own Emmalee Gisslevik to join us today and to talk us through what the test is all about. Believe it or not, despite the fact that the test is very much the heart of what we do, particularly the balance test, it remains the number one thing that we get questions about. So people are super fascinated to know what their test means to them individually. You know, we speak to people who want to know what these tests means in broader terms with regards to the science behind them. But like always, it is difficult. It's impossible for us to discuss individual cases, especially in a forum like this. As I glance down, I see we're now approaching 600 people taking part. We couldn't possibly address individual data and tests. But what I know is that by the time we've concluded today's session, you will have such a clearer insight as to what that test, what the test is about, that you'll be able to make better sense of it for yourself. And certainly when you're having conversations with other people who are likewise trying to make sense of their test data. And why is this important? You know, we live in the age of information. We've gone from the industrial to the technological, and we live in the age of information, and quite rightly so. People want to make informed choices. And the more you know about a situation, the better equipped you are to do something about a situation. And what we realize is that health in the 21st century is nuanced. There are intricate details that really relate to the individual, and that looking at things across populations is really useful. But when it comes to making sense of it for ourselves, we need to know what matters to us. And that's why at the heart of what we do, the test will always be our guiding light. So that is enough from me. It gives me immense pleasure to bring my colleague, superstar from the product team, the incredible Emmalee, to the forefront. Emmalee, welcome. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom and insights with us today. I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you, Colin. Oh, it's so nice to be back here to talk to you all, and we're going to discuss my favorite area, and that is the test and how to understand it, how we calculate the different values, and all the things that you have been thinking about, and some questions that we regularly get. I will make all of that clear for you today, and I'm going to show you a couple of pictures, and then I want to hear all of your questions and discuss more with Colin. So today we're going to discuss the test results on our database. And as you know, we have one of the largest database regarding fatty acid profiles, and that is pretty amazing. And as you know, the whole concept behind the balance oil is so closely connected to these tests. And this is why they could bring about this product and know that it actually works, and take all of the theories that they had, the researchers behind this concept, trying it out, analyzing the results, and then be able to support the blood levels of essential fatty acids. So let's start with what we are measuring, 11 different fatty acids. So that is about 98% of all of the fatty acids that we have in our blood. So it covers most of 98% of all of the fatty acids. And these are also the most important in regards to our metabolism and the cells and function and so on. So we have these 11 fatty acids in our test results, as you probably already know. And with these 11, or actually with 7 of them, we are able to calculate 6 different health indicators with different equations. And these health indicators are the omega-6 to 3 balance, and we have the omega-3 index or omega-3 level. We also have something called protection value. And we have mental strength, omega ratio, and also cell membrane fluidity. And lastly, the arachidonic acid index. But we actually have one more that we have chosen to have in one of our calculations. And I know that you probably haven't heard about it. It's a percentage of omega-6 in HUFA, highly unsaturated fatty acids. And this index is incorporated into the protection value. And I'm going to tell you all about that later. But let's start with the web page. So when you have taken a test, you will log into the web page, cincinotest.com, and you will have your result. And this is an example of a first result where you're unbalanced. This is an example of a balanced test second, or first if you are a person eating a lot of fatty fish. And here's an example of if you're semi-balanced. And what does all of this mean? If you scroll down from the first picture, you will get these detailed results. You will get the results on a bar, and you're also able to learn more. And let's start with the omega-6 to 3 balance. This is a health indicator where we measure the arachidonic acid against the eicosapentaenoic acid, or EPA. And this is shown as a ratio. It means that you have you are aiming to have 3:1. So what does this mean? What is the purpose of measuring these 2 fatty acids? This, if you have heard my talk the last time, you recognize this. This is showing the 2 essential fatty acid families, the omega-3 and the omega-6 family. And at the top, you will see the parent fatty acid and the parent fatty acid of omega-6. And these, if your diet contains these parent fatty acids, they are able to transform or convert into different forms of omega-3s or omega-6. So in different steps, they are converting and are adding change to it, so it becomes these longer fatty acids. And we have some of these fatty acids that have the potential to make themselves into something called eicosanoids. And these are things that will help in different ways in your immune system, for example. And we see the ones that are marked in the green have this less inflammatory or even anti-inflammatory potential. And we have one omega-6 as well that have this. But the EPA and DHA are the ones, DHA have more of the resolving of inflammation, whereas the EPA has this less inflammatory or anti-inflammatory potential. Whereas the arachidonic acid has the more inflammatory, the stronger reaction, the lingering of inflammation. So before this was known, that it is especially EPA and arachidonic acid that has this biggest potential of being involved in the inflammatory response. Before this knowledge, researchers were measuring the whole omega-3 family against the whole omega-6 family. And sometimes we get questions on why don't you use all of the omega-3 fatty acids when you make this balance calculation. And the reason is that not all of them are important when we are talking about the balance and the potential for inflammation and effect on heart health and brain and so on. So that is why we chose to take the two that have this biggest potential. So these two are in the balance calculations. And we have our famous Angela Rizzo with her colleagues that also have made the studies on comparing the whole blood measurements that we are doing at Cincino and in other places and in other areas of healthcare. They also use the whole blood. But if you measure against red blood cells, which have been previously have been like the golden standard for measuring different fatty acids. But if you compare it, you see you have a correlation between the whole blood EPA, the balance ratio, and the red blood cells. So this has been confirmed. And there are also more and more studies that are focusing in on this measurement and the arachidonic acid to EPA ratio. And here are some examples of studies in where they use this measurement in their studies. So that was the first one, the omega-6 to 3 balance. We also have the very known omega-3 index. And the index is well known and is the combination of EPA and DHA. So if we look at this again, it is the two of the omega-3 side, the family, that has both the anti or less inflammatory potential and DHA that has this resolving potential of resolving inflammation. And this is also the fatty acids that is involved in making the membrane more fluid. EPA also have that function, but DHA are more involved in making our cell membranes fluid. And it is also the fatty acids that we have most of in the brain. So these two are the combination that you measure when you talk about omega-3 index or omega-3 level. And what is the difference between index and level? And the index is a measurement of EPA and DHA in red blood cells. And that is something that have been known or created by the William Harris and his colleagues. So this is a well-known indicator that have been also been measured and correlates with whole blood. And since we are measuring the omega-3 index in whole blood, and it's not only the red blood cells, we often call it the omega-3 level. Then we have the protection value, and this is a value that I often get a lot of questions about. So I'm so happy to discuss this value with all of you today. And we are going to see that in the protection value, it's like a summary of 3 different known health indicators. So it's you can see it as you have some kind of disease or condition, and you want to see a doctor, and you go to one hospital, and they have one specific view of how they can measure, how they can treat you, and then you go to another hospital with their doctors, and they have a slightly different way of seeing it, measuring it, and treating it, and then you go to a third one. This is the exact same thing. It's the omega-3 balance that I've talked about, and the omega-3 level, but it also is this third, the less known, the percentage of omega-6 in HUFA, or highly unsaturated fatty acids. So this is the one that we're going to focus on now. And if we look at this again, the fatty acids that are involved in these measurements are only the highly unsaturated fatty acids. And these are the ones that have 20 and more than 4 double bonds. And you can see in this picture, we don't have this one, ETA, for example. And this is because this one is not in this calculation. You can see the calculation above, because this one don't have any known or known of this inflammatory potential or anti-inflammatory potential. So the ones that are important for our health and for the function of our cells is in this calculation. So you measure how much of the omega-6 HUFA, or I'm going to say it in the Swedish version, HUFA, how much of the omega-6 HUFA is of all of the HUFA fatty acids. So the percentage of omega-6 HUFA in total HUFA. That is the calculation. And this is something that have been put forward from a researcher named Bill Lance, or William Lance, and his colleagues. And according to his research, and also many others that use this measurement and think that this is one of the best measurement to predict mortality in heart attacks and other cardiovascular diseases. And they have found out that if you have a lower, if you look at all of your HUFA, you should have a lesser part of it, proportion of it should be of the omega-6. So if you have 30, 40, or just below 50, then you will have this prevention effect. But if you have higher than that, the risk for heart, I wouldn't say the risk for you, I would say that you are currently providing a situation that is not promoting your heart health in this case. So this is the HUFA or omega-6 percentage in HUFA that is within this protection value. But how do we calculate it? How do we put this all together? And then to understand that, we need to understand that all of these three, the omega-6 to 3 balance, the omega-3 index, and this one, all have research behind them that predicts, based on your value, predicts your risk of cardiovascular events. So they have this scale of predicting cardiovascular outcome. And we follow that. So the first step is to first calculate, of course, these 3 values. Then we need to put them in this linear regression equation. So I know that this is a bit nerdy, but I know that some of you really want this calculation. We need to put them into context of this predicting value against your risk. And we do it by calculating these 3. And third step is to summarize the 3 calculated values, and then we divide them by 3. And if your value gets below 0, and you have a negative value, then we will convert it to 0. If your value is above 100, we will convert it to 100. So this is the protection value. First, you calculate the weighted omega-3 level, the balance value, the HUFA value. You summarize it and divide by 3. And if you need to, for example, these ones are the negative values, you will have 0. So protection value is like a summary value or taking in consideration 3 different strong theories of how to best calculate your current, not risk, but current situation promoting or not promoting your heart health. And we also have the other health indicators. And I will not go as much into detail with these ones, but we have the mental strength omega ratio. And what does that mean? It's similar to the balance value. The balance value, we have the arachidonic acid and the EPA, but now we take in consideration the DHA. And as I said, the DHA is a very important fatty acids in your brain development, and there are a lot of research that are focusing on DHA in terms of different conditions or just it is something that will be researched in regard to depression and other mental conditions, but I don't mean that that this will necessarily make you well from all of these things, but this is something that are important and something to take in consideration, that researchers take into considerations today when they are measuring different mental or mood states. So with these 2 together, you get a ratio that says something about your current condition or how you provide your body to be able to be strong against these situations. And then we have the cell membrane fluidity. The cell membrane fluidity is something that we need to talk more about. Perhaps I will go more into detail with this indicator the next time. Because since you know why we are talking about omega-3 and why we are measuring essential fatty acids, it's because of the importance that they have in our cell membranes. They are the protective surface around our cells, and regarding our diet and also our situation, what we need, the body will incorporate the fatty acids from our diet, and also the body is also able actually to create some of the fats by themselves, not all of them, not the essential fatty acids. But for example, the saturated fatty acids. We get a lot of fatty acid, saturated fatty acids from our diet, but we also are able to make them within our body if we need to have more to put into our cell membrane or to use as fuel or and so on. But the thing is that what you have in your diet will affect the composition of the types of fats that you have in your cell membranes. And if you have, let's say, a lot of saturated fatty acids, you will have cell membranes that is not that fluid. It will be more rigid, I believe the word is. But if you have more of the longer, the essential fatty acids that are long, that are crooked because of the double bonds, they will take up more space in the cell membrane and make room for nutrition to go through the cell membrane. It will make a situation where all of your receptors that receive messages from other areas of your body. These receptors will be able to move around in your cell membrane to be more fluid. And all of this will just make your cells function better and in the way they are supposed to function. So by measuring how much of the saturated fatty acids in relations to the unsaturated, the polyunsaturated, the long-chain fatty acids, we can get an indicator of your cell membrane fluidity potential. And the last indicator is the arachidonic acid fatty acids, only that one in an index. So that is only the AA, the arachidonic acid. And why do we have this fatty acid and not the other ones? And this is because arachidonic acid is actually a really important fatty acid. And many believe that that omega-6 fatty acids, and especially arachidonic acid, is something that is bad for us. That the only purpose is to make negative inflammation that will hurt us. But that is, as most of you, of course, in this chat room knows, arachidonic acid and inflammation is so important for us. We will not survive long if we don't if we're not able to have this inflammation response, because we need inflammation in order for the immune system to be able to move around and go through different cell layers. So inflammation is good. Arachidonic acid is important in our cells and in different responses within our body. So if we have too much, it could be a situation in where the potential of having strong inflammatory reaction and especially lingering inflammatory responses. But if you have too little, it could also be problematic, since your cells need them, and also for a lot of other function, not only the inflammatory response, but it also has a function within our cell walls and manage how the arteries are dilating or the opposite when they become smaller, and that is a way for the body to regulate the blood flow. So this is something that is important. So if you have, for example, a perfect balance, but your arachidonic acid level is very low, and that means that probably your index is lower than is recommended. That is something to notice and to think about if you need to increase arachidonic acid, or actually we see that people taking the balance oil, if they have a too low arachidonic acid, actually will get within the green. So that is something to keep in mind, that all of these health indicators say something about your current situation, and that you need to look at both arachidonic acid and your omega-3 index when you are evaluating yours or your clients or friends' balance value. And this is something that you can find also, because a lot of you that are really interested in what these measures mean, this is not something that that all people are interested in, of course, but we have your values, the fatty acid, the detailed fatty acid table, so you can see your exact values and also compare your values against a target value that's from it's from a group of balanced people. But if you're not interested in knowing all of the details and recalculate and calculate all of the values that we have already provided to you, then don't bother to look at this table. This is only for the ones that want to know more and more and more. And since I know that a lot of you out there listening today are the people like me that want to know more, I'm going to tell you all about this table and what to think about when you are interpreting this one. So you have the target value. This is the value that you can, if you want to, compare your value to. And this is the mean value of a large group that are in balance. But it's only the mean value. And this group of this, not the target group, but the chosen group that have made this target value, they of course have individual variations because we are all different. So this is the mean value. Just something for you to compare your results. And in the next, you will see your results. And we will have the deviation, how much more or less your value is from the target value. And in this case, 3.25 above. But that doesn't say so much, since if you can see further down, you have also a difference down here of something on 3. And you could believe that this is of equal size that you are. This is negative, but you understand what I mean. But since these fatty acids are low from the beginning, it has a bigger impact. So here you will see the deviation in percentages. So this is the one that I like to look at, not the deviation. This is just if you don't want to calculate this in your head, the differences, you will see the deviation in percentages. And what is more to think about when you look at this, for the ones that want to know more. For example, this one, the saturated fatty acids. If you have, for example, this one is 3.9% above. Is this something that you need to think about, to modify? No, you don't need to modify something that is so close to the target value. This one, perhaps you could see it's above 10% in variation or deviation. Maybe this could be a sign that you have lower of the essential fatty acid or the omega-3 fatty acids. So we just need to look further down. We come to the omega-9 fatty acid, the monounsaturated fatty acid. And this has a small deviation. Sometimes this is high. And I have people that ask me if this is a good or bad sign. And let's talk about that right away, because oleic acid is one of the fatty acids that the body can produce. If you need it, the body can produce it and incorporate it in their cell membranes. And you can also get it from diet. From example, olive oil. It's an excellent source of oleic acid. And this monounsaturated omega-9 fatty acid is something that is good for you, that health professionals are urging you to decrease your saturated fatty acids, decrease saturated and increase unsaturated fatty acids, for example, with this one. The thing is, so this is a good fatty acid. The thing is, if you have essential fatty acid deficiency, that you have too low of omega-3 and also omega-6, the body can start to produce extra omega-9, because omega-9 can, in a second step, turn into a fatty acid that will have some of the same or similar function as the essential fatty acids. So this is the body's way to just help your body from not having the essential fatty acids. But of course, the best option is to have the omega-3 fatty acids. So if you have an increase, my first thought is either it is because the measurements were within 6 hours that you had a meal containing oleic acid, for example, taking the balanced oil products. Also, that could be a sign that the balanced oil works and that your body is taking up and absorbing this fat, or this could be a sign that you will have low levels of omega-3s and also perhaps arachidonic acid. In this case, this was not a big deviation from the target value. And here you can see the parent fatty acids and the next step from the parent linoleic acid. And actually, this one, the homogamma linolenic acid is the step below GLA. And then we have arachidonic acid. If you picture the metabolism of essential fatty acids. And I believe we have had some questions regarding if you have, yes, if you have, that you couldn't, let's see, you got a question, Colin, on the Thomas' presentations regarding that you're not able to have a larger amount of the secondary step. If this one is producing this one, that the GLA could not be lower than the DGLA. But that's not the way it works, since this conversion from GLA to DGLA is made by an enzyme in your body. And the rate that this enzyme is working in when it converts one fatty acid to another fatty acid, it's different between different people. So you can have an enzyme that is really fast and are in a really high rate converting this fatty acid into this fatty acid. So and this fatty acid is accumulating. Then you will have a higher than the previous. And depending on how fast your enzyme is, or maybe depending on how much of the parent fatty acid that you have been had in your diet, you might have higher than the target value, like in this case. Yeah, and I could also say a couple of words regarding the measurements that we measure in whole blood. And because some people have asked me if it's any difference if you take the test on the morning or if you have been eating. And I believe this will be more easy to understand if you look at these pictures of the whole blood that we are measuring and the departments or areas within your body that you have the fatty acids. Your blood can be divided into the plasma and the red blood cells. These two are the different areas where you can measure fatty acids, but also in whole blood. And plasma, when you measure fats in the plasma, you are measuring the short-term dietary intake of different fats. And if you measure them within red blood cells, you are measuring the long-term diet. Since the fatty acids have been incorporated into the red blood cells membranes. Red blood cells are also a form of tissue. And with the help of a picture that are showing us the different compartments or tools that you can gather within your body, we're going to look at this side, only the fat side. When you eat, you will have fats within the blood and that circulates within your body, and these fats will be traveling to different tissues and accumulate in different places and also become fat stores. So if you have a meal before you take the blood test, you will have some variations from the meal that you ate, because all of this are from the food that you have been eating. And as you know, it takes about 6 hours for fats and the EPA and DHA imbalance oil, and the blood concentration to reach the maximum. So if you take the test within these hours, you could have a variation depending on how low or high your current omega index is. Now I believe that you will have a lot of questions for me, so we stop there and let's start discussing, Colin.
There is, quite rightly, there is a ton of questions, Emmalee, and we probably don't have time to get through even a fraction of them, but let's have a go. That was fascinating and quite a thorough, rigorous insight, and I think that the evidence of that is really the kind of questions that you've teased out to people. So thanks for taking us really through that in that really in-depth understanding. Can we just hit on a few things that actually you've covered in there, but can we just hit on them as a question, because they're coming through frequently and they actually mirror a lot of the questions that we do get. So first of all, when we see from pre-test to post-test, when we see no change in the omega-3, but we see a change in the AA, so we see a change in the arachidonic acid, first of all, as a reduction, can you give people some indication of how to interpret that? What does that mean in itself?
That is a really interesting area that I would like to make a different research project into, because we see this trend that the small group of people that actually notice that at the second test their omega-3 hasn't increased, or in few cases it actually has decreased according to the numbers. But the person have been taking the oil every day. So the question is, could the oil decrease my omega-3 levels? And no, the oil is not, it's no way that it could in any theory decrease the omega-3. And I have two theories. The obvious theory is that the test is a percentage of omega-3. It's not the actual volume. So it could be that you have the same volume or even increased volume of omega-3, but you had an even higher increase in another fatty acid. Maybe you just had a salad with a lot of olive oil, for example. So your test will be influenced by, or maybe your body have a easier of accumulating some kind of different fatty acid. So it just shows, it shows lower, because if you have an increase in one fatty acid, you will have a decrease in the other, because it's a percentage. So that's the obvious, that you can have, you can get the lower number because of you have a rise in another one. And that you could have if you, for example, have had a really fatty diet before you take the test. But the other theory and the trend that I believe I see is that some people, the few people, often have really high levels of arachidonic acid. And that's not, you have arachidonic acid in diet, absolutely. There is a small fraction in, for example, meat, but not so much that you could have that big of influence from our previous diet. So if you have a really high arachidonic acid value, it is because you have accumulated that into your cells. And with these peoples, few of them have not increased their omega-3, but they have radically decreased their too high omega-6. So something have happened, something in the metabolism, and the body has starting to slowly decrease its use of arachidonic acid. At the same time, started to use the omega-3, which we wanted to because it's less inflammatory.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that I just think, sorry to interrupt, but that opens the door that this is sometimes the inherited problem. When you have a data set as large as ours is, and you start to look at grouping effects, but also individual responses, it's then unpacking the unknowns, isn't it? Like when someone asks us to make a comment on an individual test report, it's really difficult, isn't it? Because there's all that back end unknown of meal behavior. There's so much that's going on there that can play a part in the manifestation of the change that we see in the test, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And I would love to interview all of you that has individual questions. I would like to interview you about your current health states, about your diet, when you take the test. I would love to talk to all of you, but that's not possible today.
If not, and there's over 800 people, so you might regret actually making a comment. Just to we're running out of time, and there are so many questions to get through. So let's try and hit up a couple more. Let's stay on this theme for a moment, because this has been asked by a few people. What happens when we see arachidonic acid values drop too low? What can be the problem associated with that? And then the follow-on question is, does consuming the balance oil make any difference, and does it contribute towards changing that status?
Yes, this is also something that needs to be discussed individually. But one reason for having a low arachidonic acid is because of diet. Maybe you eat a really low-fat diet, and there is risks of eating a low-fat diet because you have the essential fatty acids in the fat. So this is a huge, you know more about this than me. It's a huge problem within athletes that they are not getting enough of fat, so they don't get enough of essential fatty acids and fat soluble vitamins. So that's one reason. And also, of course, different states of your body, if you inflammatory states for a long time, together with diet, of course, could contribute to having low values. And if you have really, really low values of arachidonic acid, I would not recommend that the only action you take is to continue with the balance oil. You also need to think about the amount of arachidonic acid that you get in your diet, because we know that omega-3 are competing with arachidonic omega-6. So if you have really low, you shouldn't compete even more with the arachidonic acid. You need to also have that in your diet. So both take the oil and have extra arachidonic acid. But if it's, just right below, you can absolutely take the balance oil, because we see that if you have too high or just too low, you more people get into the middle by taking the balance oil. The body strives to balance.
Yeah. The dynamic art of equilibrium.
Thank you. That's the word.
One more question about levels, because this has come through from several people. GLA, so the gamma linolenic acid, when we see that it's getting too high.
Yeah.
What's our cause for concern there? What should be our action? What should be our consideration?
GLA being too high. The only reason for it being too high. No, GLA, I wouldn't worry about GLA. That's nothing you should worry about. GLA, no, don't think about that, because that could be converted into DGLA, and DGLA actually have a lot of positive anti-inflammatory, antioxidant properties that you like. For example, in the vegan oil, we need to have extra help me call it, GLA.
GLA, that's right, yeah, that's right.
Just to get the process of having DGLA. So focus on the other fatty acids, and also having high could be a sign that you are eating too much of the LA.
Good. Thank you for picking that one up. I think we've got time for maybe two more questions. One I'm going to ask, because it's far more general and this comes across a lot. Erythrocytes, the red blood cell, measuring these things, 4-month life expectancy, 120 days. What can this really tell us about our health status?
Good question. And that is something that you should be really thorough about. That this is, I used the word potential today. I hadn't planned of using that word, but that was what I used today. It's like this is telling you only what you are. The state is. How can I explain this in English? It's not. If you have 0 on the protection value, it doesn't mean that you are going to die. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a heart attack. It only means that you are providing the body with these fatty acids that are not going to be health promotive in these areas. But it's other aspects that come into your body and will create the disease. That has nothing to do with the results. Maybe you have had a lot of cardiovascular risk factors in your body, and on top of that, haven't had the protective factors of omega-3 for a long time, or you're haven't had any exposure to those. So that's just, it tells you how you are promoting the body to have the normal functions right now, and you can change that.
That's right. And I just add to that, it's a dynamic status. So actually that 120 days after 4 months is really useful, because it's giving you an insight with regards to the change that takes place over time and your nutritional behavior and how it's influencing what's happening at a cellular level. So that's really the strength of it, is it's dynamic and it's giving you that updated insight. We're just on the hour. So I think we need to stop it there. I could just keep asking you questions for the next hour, and they're continuing to come through. But I think actually the great thing about these sessions being recorded is that people can go back and access it and take a pen and a pad of paper out and take your own time to go through it, because I listened intently throughout. There was so much rich information and consideration of the analysis and the feedback in there to be had, that it would serve you well to go back through, to do that in your own time, make notes, and really consolidate your learning around that, because Emmalee, what you shared with us was a real rich, valuable insight. Thank you very much for your expertise, your time, the sharing of your knowledge. We really do appreciate it. I think that this actually is going to provide something of a really asset, a tool, a really useful tool for people to go back to and really clarify and galvanize their understanding of what the test procedure is all about. So let's wrap it up. Thank you, Emmalee. Super.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank all of you for taking this, sharing this hour with us. Thank all of you for being on the front line, making a huge, phenomenal change to health all around the world. Never lose sight of that. What you do is incredible. You work to make the world a better place. You know, you're giving people a better way of living. It's phenomenal. We can't thank you enough. We work hard on our part to arm you to have the tools to do that. But what you do makes all the difference. So stay well. We will see you all next month. Date and time to be confirmed. In the next meetings of minds, we'll bring in a new guest to share more information and insight with you. Until then, stay well, be well, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks again, Emmalee. Enjoy the rest of your day, evening, wherever you're at. All the best. See you soon.